Today on the Rock Feed podcast, we are joined by a very special guest from one of my favorite bands of all time, Sevendust. Morgan Rose, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, I've been listening to you guys for, out of all the bands I've listened to.
Don't go too deep in there. Don't go too deep on the age.
I've been listening to you guys for a little while.
Yeah, right.
And I'm such a fan, and it's just amazing the career you guys have had and continue to have. Also, for those of you who aren't aware, I meet a lot of musicians. Probably the most loved, universally respected band of all the musicians I talk to, truly Sevendust. You guys are so well respected by people.
I'm sure that, there's going to be a little nice pile of, trolls that'll dog us somewhere, but it is kind of funny. It's like, we get less than a lot of people, because I have a hard time going into comment sections, Sure. It's a vicious place, we're so old that it's like, you didn't do that back in the day. Back in the day, there was no keyboard warrior stuff, so it was like if you said something and it got to somebody, there was a confrontation, and now it's just, who knows who it is, who knows, it could be a 9-year-old kid somewhere that goes, I'm just going to get crazy real quick, But yeah, especially with our, with our friends and the other bands and stuff, we've just been around so long. I think they're like, just be sweet to the old fellas.
You guys, after all these years, like Animosity for me, dude, one of my all-time favorite records. Can you talk about kind of putting that album together, what you remember from it, and did you know at the time that you guys were going to be making like an all-time classic?
It's weird. It's like, we talk about that record still a lot. It was the first like heavy duty production that we used. The label was, we had done 2 successful records, to sell 500,000, and maybe we sold more. There was all kinds of illegal activity that was happening around us, but to put that record out, have that kind of sound coming from some more raw records, we were like, oh damn, man, we sound like we belong with the big fellas. And the label got the record, and I remember they were like, we need another hit. We don't hear a hit. And we were like, man, we like the songs. They made us go back in and record Live Again as another song, and then they ended up releasing it as a single of some kind. But we were so confused on that record. We were kind of a mess recording it. It took us a year just because we weren't overly responsible, but there was definitely a vibe in that mentality, a lot less second guessing, more of, that free writing mentality instead of, critiquing everything. We were like, let's get out of here. That's good enough, but there was something real about it. And I love that record. It was definitely my favorite.
It's so interesting that process where you're more of just kind of open to anything, how it turns out this classic album that I still listen to. I was literally just listening to Animosity the other day. I didn't even know that he was going to be on the podcast today. He's just so cool. He did it on the spot. And it's
Barry
so
walked
great.
in, he goes, your boy's over here. I'm like, man, I want to go over there. So, yeah.
Yeah, shout out Barry from 3 Days Grace. You guys have your own band as well.
Yeah.
So shout out Sean from Breaking Benjamin, my boy. Talk about that Supergroup and kind of where people can find out about that.
So, as of now, it's called Table 9. But that was just another fluke thing. I was producing a band in a little small town in Illinois. And me and Sean and Barry are super tight. Me and Sean were hanging out a lot, and Sean and Barry had come up to do this little event. We would do these little things called Instamix, where you'd get into a room and 3 or 4 people that are semi-recognizable, would get in a room in front of a bunch of people, and we'd write from scratch. And so I had been working with another band, and I was singing some scratch vocals for them just as kind of a guide track for them, and Barry heard it and was like, who's that singing? And the engineer in there was like, oh, it's Morgan from Sevendust. He goes, no, it's not. He does all the screamy stuff. And he goes, no, that's him singing. And it turned into, let's write some songs. We'll write some songs, we'll put them in the bank and, sell them off to some other people. And then after doing like 5 or 6, he was like, I want to keep it. Let's just do a band. So I'm like, dude, I'm no front man, that's for sure. You ain't catching me up there, you know. That's not happening here, you know. So it's kind of like this cool make-believe thing right now where we're gonna put it out, you know. I think it'll, you know, I did the little solo thing, so I sang a little bit on it. This is definitely way more vocal than my solo thing was. So, I don't know. I'll probably get dogged, like I said. The trolls will come out in drones, but I'm not a singer, dude.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just fun.
And
We're
who
having
cares
fun.
what the trolls think anyways?
Right.
You know, that's how I'm constantly telling myself, like,
Oh, yeah, they're
know.
fucking everywhere.
yeah,
dude.
they're
It's
everywhere.
crazy.
It's a guarantee that you're going to deal with them. So with Sevendust, I'm so interested in, like, what do you remember about how this band came together? How you formed this amazing band that's still going so strong many years later, doing arenas, however many years later?
I mean, it was the best thing. The only advice I ever give anybody to this day, because I know nothing more than the next guy, you know, and they like, what advice do you have? And I'm like, just find some dudes you like. It doesn't really matter if they're that good. You know, they don't have to be the best guitar player or the best singer. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. I think the chemistry for us was built through the brotherhood. And I put the band together because I didn't think we'd ever do anything. It was like, we're never going to get a record deal. Back then, record deals really were important, you know? And without one, you had no shot.
Yeah.
So we're like, we'd already had everybody turn us down before. We're like, this isn't going to go anywhere, you know? So I quit the band that I was in. Vinny was like, wherever you want to go, I'm going with you, because he was in that band with me. And I was like, you know, let's just find people that are cool. The guy that was like our roommate had said, John Connolly lives right down the hill in the same apartment complex, and he's written some pretty cool songs.
Whoa.
And I'm like, John plays drums. He was signed as a drummer in another band, but then he left that band, so he's just like sitting in his room with a 4-track or an 8-track, you know, just writing songs on guitar. And he goes, no, he's playing guitar now. And I'm like, I mean, I love John, but I mean, can he play at all? And we went down there, and I'm not kidding, the first riff I heard was Black.
Whoa.
Very first thing I heard. And I was just like, what is that, dude? You know, like, that was weird. So I'm like, you want to record this stuff? Like, we can just go in and do a demo, you know, record some stuff. And
What's he using on that gives it that?
that actually, God, man, we could talk for days.
I
It's
know,
like
but
that
I
whole
could sit here and
thing.
talk to you for 5 hours. We'll have to do this again as well.
Dude, we just talked about that the other day too, where we didn't even want it on the record. We didn't want Black on the record at all.
Wow.
And because that was like the first song we played, you know, so we were already tired of the song before the first record came out. Now it's fucking 30 years later. I really hate it, you know, but it's like, we didn't want it on there. And our manager at the time said, that's going to be your most popular
Yes.
song. It's got to go on the record. And we're like, this guy doesn't know shit, you know, like, I give him full credit for it, because we definitely were like, we don't want it on the record.
Was he like an A&R type?
He was our manager.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was JJ French.
Wow.
From Twisted.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So,
Shout out Twisted.
yeah. So then he was the one that came in the room and said, it needs an intro. You know, it needs something to start it. And so Clint started screwing around, you know, with a delay pedal and a wah, and, you know, and we were like, that sounds cool. You know.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it. The first time we recorded that song as it being Black, Butch Walker did the demos. Butch Walker, there was no Marvelous 3 or any of that. He just was living, you know, at his parents' house. Wow. We went to his parents, to Big Butch's house. And I remember we were like, let's do some cool, like, you know, syncopated thing behind it. So there was an octopad. When we went back to like finish up a little guitar thing, we had moved all the drums and everything out. There were no drumsticks. So I took a pencil and a ruler and that just playing that on an octopad with a pencil and a ruler to lay the bed behind it, you know, it was just so primitive.
It's so interesting how you guys, it was just like spiritually coming out of you, and you guys are really not overthinking it, it seems like, at that time.
No, it was super cool back then. You know, it was as, you know, a little bit of success and corporate stuff getting involved, you know. I mean, Butch ended up doing years later, he ended up doing the Seasons record, and it's a great record to me. It's
Absolutely
definitely different. It's definitely different. And they, it was a corporate thing. I look back and I'm like, those records were bigger records really than the first two records, but we lost a part of our identity, and we lost definitely a part of our supporters, because those first two records were super raw and heavy. So people that were just like, we don't want anything but that. When we started to go into that, oh, you got like a really sing-along chorus here and you guys are softening up, they're like, yeah, we're good. And, when we started, there was no Slipknot or Gojira or anything.
You guys were several years before that.
Yeah, I mean, we were beating up bands. We were beating up bands where we really just didn't have a place for them to put us.
Yeah.
There was the Coal Chambers and the Machine Heads and Sepultura and stuff like that was happening. Obviously, Slayer and Korn and things like that were there, but it hadn't like fully taken over.
Right.
So we were playing with bands like Fuel.
Wow.
Who I loved, and I really were super close with all the guys, but it was just a really weird match.
Right.
We played with the Nixons, It had nothing against them at all. If we played with Gojira, we would sound like fucking Aha. It's like, it's just not the same animal, It's like I would take a beating, and well aware of it, and have.
Right.
We played with Slipknot, and we're like, oh shit, we're getting our ass handed to us, and there ain't shit you can do about it, Play the heaviest songs you want, you're dead, it doesn't matter.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted just to catch up with you here for a few minutes. We're going to have to do a full-on episode.
Absolutely,
he has a meet and
dude.
greet. We're right before the show. He's generous enough to sit down for a few minutes. And
I'd rather
it's
do
obvious
this
to
than
me
anything.
that we could sit here and go for, we'll absolutely have to do
Yeah,
a part
man.
two.
You tapped on some stuff where I was like, well, I can get deep in on that.
Dude, I was literally like growing up, I'd have this little clock radio, and my local radio station would play Sevendust every night. I'd like fall asleep, and I would wake up memorizing your songs. Like, it was just insane.
Cool.
That era, you guys were dominating, and to see you guys still going so strong, one of the most universally respected bands in rock, Sevendust, it's an honor to have you here.
Dude, honor to be here.
Thank you, bro.